big advocate on that because our voice is so powerful. We don't even realize how powerful our voice is. I could say a curse to you right now, and that could create such an emotion and an effect.
Do it.
I could also do the opposite and lift you up. So what we realize is with our voice, getting your voice right in the right rooms with the right people allows you to really connect and take that next step for whatever it is, business, relationships, everything.
So it is my pleasure to be here today with the guy with the coolest name on earth, Jay Dhahan. When I met this guy, it was right after RiseCon, and we had a fancy dinner that Jay organized. We went, we drank bottles, and then the next day we had a pool party. I went. This guy had a table section. He was popping bottles. I'm like, who is this guy? I think someone even introduced you as the King of Tampa. So Jay, I'm excited to have you here on the show. You're an expert in communication and the way that we articulate, and you help men succeed through those deliverables. So Jay, I'm excited to dig into that. Hopefully pull all of that out of your brain over the next hour or so. Thank you for being here with me today, Jay.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate that. And just thinking about that day that we did meet and that amazing weekend.
Yeah.
That was another example of just how connection through conversation, just meeting somebody at an event and then being able to actually build that relationship to the point where we're here. So I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. And I remember one of the questions I asked you and your response really stuck with me. It's like, thank you for doing this. You organized the dinner, you had the bottles at the pool party. That wasn't necessary. Let me know if you want me to throw any money. And you're like, nah, man, like this is, what I do. I'm going to end up profiting from this. So I'd love to hear about that. How do you turn investments like that, organizing and buying dinners, organizing tables and services, how do you make that profitable?
Well, I think it started with me just being able to understand that I love the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Right. I love going out to bars. I love going out and connecting and networking. And being able to turn that into something that could profit, yes, was me having an established business. So that is one key point of it. But it was really bringing the right people into the right rooms and getting them to really feel my energy. Right. That's where I'm such an advocate for real life person connections.
Yeah.
Because in that energy, in that moment, when we're out there having dinner and we're popping champagne bottles and I grabbed the mic and I made a speech, there was 1, 2, 3 guys in there that said to themselves, man, I wish I had that confidence. I wish I could grab a mic like that and speak. And that exactly started it's unintentional as well too. I know that it's a byproduct of it, but going out there and really getting men and other people to come together and feel that energy, that gives them to say, okay, Jay, how do you do this? Show me how to do it.
Yeah,
which is a great lead for me.
And that was kind of my thought too. It wasn't really like, I wish I had that confidence, but I was like, who is that guy that, got the back room at Meat Market? We're popping bottles. I want to know that guy. I want to see what he does. I want to be a part of it. And if you get a room full of guys like me, obviously I've got a few bucks, I've had some success, and you have an offer that's related to something that I could benefit from or something that I want in life, one of my desires, then I can see all of that paying for itself very quickly.
Exactly. And it's about speaking, right? It's really being able to articulate.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and I'm a big advocate on that because our voice is so powerful. We don't even realize how powerful our voice is. I could say a curse to you right now, and that could create such an emotion and an effect.
Do it.
I could also do the opposite and lift you up. So what we realize is with our voice, getting your voice right in the right rooms with the right people allows you to really connect and take that next step for whatever it is, business, relationships, everything.
Right. And putting yourself in a position where you can use that superpower that you've developed, articulation, such as the backroom and Meat Market, where you can pick up the mic and you're surrounded by people who don't have a choice now but to listen to the guy who organized the dinner is a great, great move. So I want to commend you on that. And I hope some other people, including myself, will take your example and do that for themselves. So Jay, were you always articulate? How did you develop this superpower?
Actually, funny enough, complete opposite. I was so fearful of public speaking.
Yeah.
I was that guy that would show up to the conference and I would sit in the back and I would take pages and pages of notes, don't get me wrong, but I would never put my hand up. Even when they would say, somebody else's name that was similar to mine, I would have that panic attack. And from that moment, I realized, I saw a speaker on stage who ended up becoming a very, very powerful mentor of mine, Richard Dolan. And I saw him on stage for the first time at a real estate conference. And just the way he was articulating, the way the audience was just so engaged, I thought to myself, I was like, wow, one day I'll do that. One day I'll be able to speak on a stage like that. And from there, my journey started. I started to develop myself. I started, building. I built most of my wealth through commercial real estate development. So I took a lot of that money that I was making and I started investing heavily into myself, really, finding the right coaches, the right mentors, doing the right studies, all to perfect communication. Not even just the word track, the energy, the body language. That's what really got me into the NLP side of things. But ultimately, what it was for me was now using that language to inspire in others. Because I know everyone has a story, everyone has a message, but it's hard to articulate. So when I was that shy, young, scared kid, I told myself, no, it's going to change, because they say that the number one fear is public speaking.
Yes.
So death is number two. Can you believe that? People are rather scared. They're scared to die compared to public speaking. So why not conquer that first one?
Yeah, most people never imagine that they'll be on stage. But having been in the PR space for so long, everybody wants to be on stage, but everybody's terrified to speak. So it's inspiring to hear that you weren't always an articulate master of spoken word. What were the steps like? I want to talk to the people right now who are listening, who really want to get on stage. I want to get on stage. I love being on stage, but it scares me too. How do you get better?
The thing is, what scares you? And that's the question, because most people will answer that question. I might mess up. I might say the wrong thing, which is crazy, because the fact that I learned at the very beginning, at the first step of it all, was 55% is body language. It's actually this right now, how our energy is connecting. 38% now is nonverbals. It's the tonality, it's my pitch, it's my volume, it's my duration in my speech. And only 7% is just the words that are coming out of my mouth. So when you look at a stage and you see a stage as scary, understand that only 7% is just the words that are coming out of your mouth.
You think you made that a lot more scary. Let me tell you why. I guess at first you think, all right, I have to get up on stage. I have to not forget my words. I just have to kind of deliver it and not cry, not sweat. But now I have to get up and think about all these other things. Am I monotone? Am I keeping my hands at the wrong place? Who am I making eye contact with? That's a lot of different things that you need to keep in mind, that you need to practice, you need to develop. Are all of those things that you developed through coaching, training, practice, YouTube videos? Tell me what you did.
Absolutely. So before we get there, just the framework of that is like, first is overcoming that fear.
Yes.
Right. Second is creating a framework, putting a framework together so that you know how you're opening, what your middle is. You don't need to be double questioning that, especially on a stage, especially creating an offer off of stage. And then lastly, it's about now the articulation. It's about really now positioning yourself. 450 words per minute we can think, but only 150 to 200 we can get out. Which means even when I'm speaking right now, or a speaker's on stage speaking, you do have the bandwidth in your brain to still be aware of those things. Where are my hands? Where am I looking? How am I engaging in the audience? So you still have that bandwidth if you give yourself to breathe and pause at the right times, to recollect your thoughts in case you do mess up. I like just little strategies that you can learn.
Yeah. So let's start with what's the worst thing that can happen on stage? Because I agree. Conquering that fear is the first thing to get up there and to take a step towards getting better. What's the worst thing that you've ever seen happen on stage? Maybe it was you, maybe it's someone you were seeing. What's the story?
Like, of course, there's like the common ones of just like falling or not saying anything. But I think really it comes down to just showcasing that you're scared.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest one. And that does apply to a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be something so extravagant like falling off of stage. But it could be just, when people don't feel your authenticity, but they want to see your authenticity, it's like a gap that you put into from you and the audience.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of speaking coaches. They all say the same thing. Authenticity. If they can feel it, you're going to crush.
Yeah.
So fear.
On that authenticity side for a quick sec, that authenticity is the hardest thing that speakers are looking for. Reason being is that, again, there's always an agenda to the message. If you can get your message to come across as the way to showcase who you are, what your business is about, and the specific call to action that you want the audience to do, a behavioral change that you want them to do, that alone puts you in the position of having that confidence and being able to know how to streamline your talk.
I love that. And what I've noticed from being on stage, my first time sucked. It was really bad.
It always is.
Yeah, someone told me just make eye contact with somebody and keep eye contact with someone in the audience. So I'm pacing back and forth the stage, looking this one girl in the eye while I'm trying to deliver my speech. And it was just a bloodbath. I watched it later back on video. I was like, oh no. And then the same dude who told me to make eye contact is like not the same person the whole time. You have to switch throughout the
I'm just
talk.
thinking what the girl is thinking. It's either this whole speech was customized to me,
Yeah.
or I'm super intimidated right now.
Everyone else is probably like, what's going on with that girl? What's the relationship there? But what I found, even after bombing, was that everybody was super supportive. Not a single person booed or threw any tomatoes. Everyone came off and said, you did a great job. Thank you for being brave and getting up here and being there for us. So I'd say, at least, unless you're talking in a middle school, a bunch of assholes throwing stuff at you, you're probably going to be okay, and you're going to get a lot more support than you think you would.
The thing is, people will always encourage you getting off a stage because it is the number one fear. We just talked about that, right? So when somebody sees you get up there, they still got to give you that credit regardless.
Yeah.
Regardless of how bad you might tank it. It's still going to be like, you know what? I give them respect for getting up there, for sharing their message.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a very commonality that we do crave that a lot, is that attention on stage.
And I think that's why we're so enthralled, so impressed when we see a true master up there, and we're just, it's magic. I've watched Tony Robbins talk for 4 hours straight, and I felt like it was a split second, just everything. I was just so engaged. I felt with him. The entire audience was like in the same mind frame. It was just such a beautiful experience. So watching a true master up there, something that everyone else is so scared to do. It's amazing. It's godlike almost.
Tony's extremely powerful for this. Yeah. How he uses his techniques, but how he opens up an audience and how he keeps them engaged. That's the biggest thing, is that he'll say things like, everybody say I, and then the whole audience goes I.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's creating that flow and and he's keeping the momentum. That's another challenge that a lot of speakers have, is that they can build momentum to a certain point, but then they can't maintain it.
Right.
That's another thing. Like that's a huge piece, especially if you're doing 60 minutes and
brings
plus.
you down.
Yeah.
Really hard to do. And he's maybe he's the guy, you probably know this better than I do, that really brought NLP to the mainstream, Neuro-Linguistic programming. And I know you have a degree in this, you have formal training in this, as well as some training in hypnosis. How does that apply to speaking? How does that apply to asserting yourself in social situations or situations in business? Break down NLP for me.
State of mind.
Okay.
I'm just going to go simple as state of mind. Well, we'll decode this, because state of mind is the most important thing. On the exterior shell, we're always going to be given scenarios, situations, downfalls, adversities. Out of the common 7 emotions that we feel, 6 are negative, right? Joy is the only positive emotion we feel. So when we're faced with these 6, keeping that state of mind on an exterior level is the first thing. So with NLP, it's interesting because what it teaches you how to do is how to disassociate. That is the biggest thing that I've learned from it, is disassociation of the thought patterns. So if, for example, if I'm angry right now, I'm in an angry-like state, I'll use language in my head like, I am angry. But what happens is, if I can get to the second layer now, I start to say, I'm having a thought that I'm angry. Those two right there is like almost like the devil and angel on your shoulders.
Right.
One saying, I'm angry. One's like, you're just having a thought you're angry. But the third level is, I believe I'm having a thought that I'm angry. And by the time you can disassociate that 3 times out, it's not so much of a problem. So state of mind is the key thing, is keeping your state of mind clean will then allow you now what the next decision that you got to make, speaking or communicating or connecting.
I feel like that reminds me a lot of meditation, right? People taking control over their emotional states.
Correct.
Which can be a challenge for a lot of people who are so driven by emotion. They feel anger and they can't help but just see red. They feel sadness and they can't help but to start crying. So would you say that NLP is achieved through meditation, through practice? How do you get to a point where you can achieve those 3 levels of dissociation?
So that is the practice in it, right? Taking the time to be self-aware. When you're feeling something, self-awareness, then implementing calculations, right? So you can understand, look, I'm feeling this and I know that I'm feeling off, but now track that. How many times do you get upset in a week? How many times do you get angry? Track it. Start to blow your own mind by going, damn, did I really do that? That's how many times I was off my game this week. So once you get that, then you can apply a strategy that would make sense.
So what strategy do you use for NLP in your day-to-day practice? Do you find yourself feeling certain things and digging deeper into your own subconscious to to fix them? What does that look like for you?
Absolutely. So when things hit me, of course, circle of excellence is an interesting one. It's a technique that you can use where you do get into a nice state of mind. You create a circle in front of you, an imaginary circle. And what you're doing is that you're going to step into this circle 3 times with common breathing. But each time you step in, you're downloading information. Think of your body as the hardware, and you're downloading new information. This could be a thought from a mentor. This could be something that you read, something that you really want to download or emulate. Once you get through these 3 cycles, and you get this on repetition, it becomes a faster way to use meditation. Changing your thought patterns is as quick as you being able to handle the emotional, I can say, adversity around it. So when you can start to backtrack that, you start to analyze your own brain. And for me, it's interesting because I'm not saying that I don't get angry. I'm not saying that I don't get upset, but my time windows now are a lot smaller.
Right.
I give myself permission. I give myself a window. If I'm angry, I'll set a timer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I'll say for this 10 minutes, I'm going to actually express it. Because that's another thing that we don't do as humans is we don't express it. We suppress it so easily. And men are even more guilty than women. Women are at least more vocal about their emotions. We're not. So we suppress it quickly and then we don't think that it's there. So just give yourself that permission. I always give myself permission. It's the weirdest thing too. Sometimes a girl will look at me and be like, okay, like I'm like, just the timer. Just in 10 minutes, I'll be good. And she's like, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, that's the way you got to train yourself to be like.
Right. Learned and practiced skill. So you shared 2 tools that I think are really helpful for everyone. The circle tool, I think bringing some kind of physical model into the act of dissociating, and then the timer and giving yourself permission and actually expressing that emotion. Those are really good tools for handling it and getting better at NLP. When you're expressing those emotional states for the 5 minutes, 2 minutes, however long you're giving yourself, say it's sadness. Will you cry for 2 minutes and then you're immediately able to snap back into a prime state?
So it never started with the 5-10 minutes, right? It always started with, longer period of time. And then what you do is, let's just say my clock is 24 hours.
Yeah.
Now then I'm going to aim for 23 hours, 22, 21. And I'm slowly going to bring that back down to whatever I feel is right. Because you'll never instantly be able to shut it off, especially at the beginning, because these things we're not emotionless creatures, but at the end of the day, we are to a point very intelligent. So you can start to train your brain in a way to start to wind that clock down so that if for example, I'm in that state of mind, I am upset, I will express it, but I now know that clock is coming. My brain is now intelligent enough to understand, okay, this is the only permission that I've given you to do this. Right. After this is finished, we need to move on because it's no longer helping our future.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but by expressing it, I'm assuming you have a mature brain. You're not throwing a temper tantrum every time you're angry in public. What is expressing it for you? How do you manifest the expression of that emotion?
Yeah, so for something like anger, it could be, using the gym, right? Going for a run, using healthy endorphins to pump it up. For sadness, it really is just being emotional.
Yeah.
Taking that time to cry, taking that time to actually sit there and feel it and say, you know what, I'm actually truly sad. Because again, we don't do this. We try to get to the next thought too quick without giving ourselves permission. And then when you get into other ones like disgust, when you get into other things, like fear is another big one.
Yeah.
Right. Fear is interesting because fear is very manipulative. But I always think of like fear and some of these negative emotions as like somebody coming into the room and just sitting on your head. And you're like, and you're looking around, and you're like, why are you sitting on my head? You're not allowed to sit on my head right now, but we let them all day.
Right.
Instead, taking acknowledgement of that is saying, okay, look, you're allowed to be in the room, but you're going to come sit here next to me. You're not allowed to sit on my head anymore. I need you sitting next to me. And what does a bully do when a bully doesn't get a reaction? Bully leaves. So we have to take into consideration our emotions are bullies and they're constantly bullying us. So the more attention that we feed them with, the more that they're going to keep picking at us.
I like how you use these physical manifestations like the bully sitting on your head as fear. And if you can imagine yourself taking that off your head and putting it next to you, that helps you conquer that fear. And I think that's, from what I hear from talking to multiple experts, that's a really good way to think about these things, is give them a face, give them a name, and then you can start to take control over those emotions. How does NLP relate to hypnosis? Because you mentioned hypnosis, and I'm very curious. I'm sure everybody is. Is that something that you use in your day-to-day life, in your communication? Can you make me quack like a duck? Tell me about hypnosis.
Well, first, going back to the NLP topic there, it's interesting using colors and shapes because techniques in anchoring.
Yeah.
When we anchor and we break certain negative habits, for example, fears and phobias, taking something that's so real life, putting it into a shape and a color and being able to do something with that is the pathway. That is the actual technique itself. Right. So what we now understand with NLP, bring that into hypnosis now. Hypnosis is doing that without you knowing that that's happening. So think of a TV commercial. A TV commercial has embedded commands inside of that commercial that's being able to capture your attention, just like how we know with content creation nowadays, to be able to give you value and then to give you a call to action that's going to really move.
Do you have any
hypnosis
examples of commercials that come to mind when you think about that specifically? It's very interesting because I see it all the time too.
There was a Taco Bell commercial. It was incredible. You know which one I'm talking about?
I've seen some good ones.
But there was a Taco Bell, and it was so cool because what they were trying to do is they were trying to hit a different demographic with Taco Bell. So they got, people that were 50, 60, 70 years old to act cool again. Young, cool, and they're sneaking out of the house and they're pretending to do all this kind of stuff. They're getting in their car, they're going to the drive-thru and they're getting Taco Bell. Now, what was interesting is that you in the beginning have already hit your ideal demographic. You've gotten them to understand like they want to feel alive again. They want to feel young again. They want to feel that momentum. And then you're solving it with your product being like, you just got to sneak out and get some Taco Bell, man. So it's interesting on how you can use, and again, people usually associate hypnosis with that cluck like a chicken model. Right. I'm going to be able to woo, woo, woo.
I associate hypnosis with I can control your subconscious with actions that I take. Do you feel like you have that power when you're in a room, whether it's one-on-one or with an audience?
Absolutely. And that's the empathic side coming out. But it's also now just the intelligent side of watching, analyzing, reading a room, seeing who's paying attention, who's actually engaging, who's making where are feet pointed. I was actually in a meeting. It was interesting. I was in a meeting about 5 guys, and I could tell one of the guys, I could already feel a little bit of his angst, but he was the only one there that had his feet pointed right towards the door. And that just gave me an indication right away. Like he wants to exit. He wants to exit. Later on, we found out he just actually needed to go to the bathroom. He was just like, I was dying during that meeting, man. I just needed to go. But the thing is his body language now actually told things without his voice actually being able to vocalize it. So when we watch body language and we use that with hypnosis, it's interesting because what we're using is visual cues. We're 70 to 80% visual as humans. So we're using our visual cues to capture somebody in for us to be able to embed certain commands to drive behavior.
Taking that one step further, when you're a kid and someone's like, I gotta pee, and you start going, psst, you turn on the water. That's how I would interpret that situation using hypnosis. Like I made him pee himself. He didn't realize I was doing it. I started making some noises and he just went. What can you do to affect behaviors in others rather than reading body language? Is there any specific strategy?
Are you saying off of a stage or just one-to-one?
Any situation. Say I'm sitting here with you and you want me to take an action. You want me to think something. Is there anything that you could do to put something in my head or make me take a specific action? What would that be?
Well, let me just ask you, if you could just for 1 second, just imagine a blue sky with a white puffy cloud. And if you had to take that white cloud and make it into an animal shape, what animal would it be?
An otter.
Perfect. So right there in that exact moment, you went into your first level of subconscious, your alpha state. You created that picture in your mind. So imagine is the most powerful word in the entire language. That's my opinion, and there's been some studies around that as well too. But just using the word imagine, I already set you in a direction to make an action.
Yes.
Your subconscious didn't think twice about, should I do this? Should I not? It was just, okay. And you even closed your eyes.
Yeah.
So
what are the different states, and at which state are you open to suggestion? How does that work?
Suggestion is interesting because, when we talk about persuasion, especially from stage, from one-on-one, there's different sales tactics you can use. So when I compare sales to kind of hypnotherapy, there are similarities in between it, but a hypnotherapy perspective is what is the actual result that the person wants? And when I say that, I mean like, what is their feelings and their emotions and how is that going to affect? On a business sales perspective, it's like, what is my result? How are they generating more sales? How are they actually getting their result? So combining both together is interesting because you get to really, again, I always use it as the empathic side, the spiritual energy side, because you're really taking that next step to really understand them, not just understand their needs and their wants and what their pain points are, but really feel now inside on a kinesthetic level what their intention really is. I always talk about intentional thoughts, right? People always think that they have they want something in life, but whenever they make decisions, there's always an intentional thought. You can call it your secret agenda, you can call it this, but most people don't even know their intentional thought. They want to do something, they do it, or they're thinking about doing something, but they don't actually take the time to reverse engineer and peel those layers off that onion to figure out why
am I doing what I'm doing?
Exactly.
I love that. Let's go back to on stage. We mentioned a lot of the tools that you can use to be better on stage, NLP, emotions. I'd love to talk about some specific strategies for once you're on stage, how to articulate better, how to get your voice to sound better. We just talked about some before the episode started. I like to take a big yawn before I start. I feel like it makes my voice sound deeper. Body language. What do you do with your hands? Who do you make eye contact with? Do you walk across stage like I did when I embarrassed myself? How fast do you walk? What are some tips that you can give to people who are getting on stage for their first time and they have all those questions? What do I do with my feet, my eyes, my voice? How do I do this?
So when we look at this, again, going back to the original point, it was fear. So we used NLP to overcome fear. That was our first part. Our second part is framework. Before we even jump into the actual visual side of how to present and how to actually showcase body language, we really want to get cleaned up on that framework. Now, 10x stages is a good example. There's many different frameworks you can use when doing a talk, especially if it's for business related, right? We help our clients, for business owners specifically, create a stage offer. So when you're on stage and you're offering something now, it's interesting because you need a proper format. You can't walk up and start selling your product.
No.
You can't walk up and just only talk about your business and pump yourself up. So there's different formats. So 10x stages was actually very powerful because they created a basic story braid outline. The opening story. Opening story is how you open up any presentation. Inside your opening story, very briefly, you want to be ordinary, extraordinary, and showcase your why. What I mean by that is ordinary, you want to be able to level out with your audience. You want to be able to get them to understand you're relatable. You've been in a position where they can relate to. I can't just walk in and say, I'm a millionaire. I've been doing all this crazy stuff. They're not going to listen to me. I got to get them relatable. The extraordinary portion now is actually showcasing to them, this is what I've been able to accomplish. This is why I'm an authoritative figure. And this is why you need to listen to me. The last and third part of your opening story is your why. So now that you have all this experience, why do you do what you do? If you can characterize and get that all into one opening story, it will quickly, effectively get the audience to truly understand who you are, and you'll build that initial rapport. The second stage now is going to be your content. This is where you actually start to deliver value to the audience. 3 points, maybe 4. I would never go over 4 points, just our attention spans. That's why phone numbers are in 3s and 4s. We just can't really comprehend more than 4. So get 3 to 4 bullet points. And in your bullet points, use examples, use stories. I know it's a simple thing, but we actually often so many times we're trying to deliver all of our value and trying to give all this, education and everything to people, but they need to understand it in a way that they can say, it was like that. Because everyone will remember a story. They'll never remember the information.
Yes, 100%.
Once you've done your content, now you're going into your call to action. Now that you've given value, the law of reciprocity now, you're also now going to ask them to do something. You're going to give a call to action. You're not going to give more than one. You're going to give one specific call to action, whether it's click on this link, scan this QR code, whatever it may be. But that specific one is just your opt-in, and really, people sometimes will go on a hard sell and actually sell their product. If you're in that type of stage, great. And then some people do the consultation approach. I still don't recommend that. I would just give the audience something free. Free value, nice little ebook, something to opt in. And that way you get to just really build even more trust with them because you're giving them something, but you're asking them also to go on your website or your landing page to put in their email. And that's what we do best when it comes to the marketing side.
Right.
And then lastly, close it out. And after you're done your call to action, the closeout is interesting because it could be a story that was related to your opening story so that you can kind of sandwich it together. Or the end is really just that motivational piece now. It's really just getting their energy fired up. It's really just getting them, you've delivered your points, you've asked them what to do, they know who you are now, and it's just really leaving them with some flavor and some fire.
I like your framework a lot. In fact, most of the great speakers that I've ever seen use that exact framework. The hero's journey to kick off their speech. Here's the idiot that I used to be. Because a lot of people can relate to the idiot. A lot of people were the idiot. Some people still are the idiot. And then the hero's journey, how I became Tony Robbins. Here's everything I went through to get here. Now my mission is to give back and help you guys do X, Y, and Z. Deliver tremendous value. pitch at the end if that's an option. How do you make the audience remember you? How do you be memorable with so many great speakers, with so many similar stories? Is there anything you can do to be memorable and stand out?
So this comes down to our third point now. So I like this. This comes down now to the body language. This comes down now to the tonalities. This comes to when to speak up, when to calm down, when to understand how to really create fire.
Yeah, let's dive into that. What body language do you use?
So body language, one key thing is that a lot of people will do face down. That's a huge. When we're sitting, it's a little bit different because we do got our hands on our lap and we got to do something with them. But on a stage, especially, you always want to be open palms, right? If I go to
Trump style.
Exactly. If I look at somebody and I go, anybody have any more questions?
Yeah.
If I'm going like that, people are gonna be like, but anybody have any more questions? You're inviting. You're being open.
Yes.
This is a big thing that I see a lot of speakers.
That difference when you turned your hands. That's crazy.
Huge. And a lot of speakers mess up on that because they don't know what to do with their hands. And hands in pocket, that's another big one. Like I know hands are sometimes uncomfortable, but you have to be able to use them with your speech. Like even how I just went like that, I circled my head, but I circled my hand as well too.
Right.
It's working in consistency. Politicians do this a lot when they're right on the beat. When they're making a valid point and need to understand, they go onto the beat. That gives that kind of extra flavor with it. Eye contact is also important. Not looking at one person, I will say, but looking around. And when I say looking around, I mean choose a couple of people. Yes, if you need to kind of use that to really keep yourself focused. But what are you really? Again, the audience is there to learn from you, so be engaged with them. It's not just about looking at them. It's about making sure that you can feel. We did this exercise, and I'll just give you a quick little thing here. Please. We did this exercise during an incredible conference by my mentor, Richard Dolan. And we got into a giant circle in the conference room. And what we were doing is with your hand and with your clap, you had to clap and push as much energy as you could. And what we started to realize at the beginning, people were like, okay, this is not going to really work. Like, come on. By the end of it, everyone started getting into it. And you could literally, from across the room, feel someone's clap and energy. So they were like, I would point to somebody and I'd go clap, boom. And like at the end, they would know who's receiving it. The person would be like, oh, it's me. And they would clap. So at the beginning, it was really just discombobulated. But at the end, it was almost like we were targeting across the room. And then when we spoke about that afterwards and he gave the lesson, he said, that's how powerful energy is. It's not just looking at somebody. It's shooting your energy at them so that when they see you look at them, it's like the speaker's talking directly to them.
I feel that when I'm in the audience sometimes. You can tell when someone's a great speaker. I'm like, oh my God, he's looking and talking directly to me, but he's probably not. There's probably 100 other people that feel that energy pointed at them. So cool. How do you develop that? How do you use that?
So developing that is, again, the practice. It is really just, it's going to go back to that same principle of just practice. Getting on a stage, though, and knowing your audience is huge, right? Certain audiences, you'll already be able to tell the energy in the room. So you kind of want to mimic, model, and lead them in a certain way. Mirror, right? But mirroring is hard because you're on a stage and everyone's just sitting.
Right.
So whenever you're looking into the audience and you understand the demographic, you understand what they're there for, the whole purpose of the conference, that can really help you understand. And then another thing on the side of that is, find a couple of people during the break that you have had a conversation with. I always use that one. That's an incredible way to be relatable and use those references. Oh, I remember talking to, Joe in the hallway there, and we were talking about this, right? That again creates more energy within the flow. So developing that is just the skill sets like that, like little techniques like that.
That's a great technique.
Find a couple of people, use their names, because now it's not only just a story of mine. It's like, no, I actually physically on lunch had an amazing conversation with Joe, and we were talking about this, and now that added into my value point.
Right. And if the audience is anything like that person or two that you talk to, you're now more relatable to them because you understand them a little bit better.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about some of the body language that you want to have, what to do with your hands, what to do with your eyes. Mm-hmm. What do you do with your feet? Are you walking around stage? Are you stagnant? Do you ever sit down and get level with the audience? Do you walk around the crowd like Tony Robbins?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the audience, right? If you got an audience like Tony Robbins' audience, they're ready to start dancing and jumping all over the place. So that's different. But just general common rule is, of course, respect your surroundings. Don't be pacing back and forth. People get more confused on that than anything. The simple rule of thumb is make sure you're addressing the whole audience. A lot of speakers will just stand in the middle, and then they'll just kind of talk out like this. But you got to be able to now get to one side, spend a little bit there, then slowly kind of get back into the middle. then go to the right side. So be engaging in all aspects and never get too close to the stage. If you're going to get off the stage, you'll walk down and you'll go closer to the audience. But getting to the edge of the stage is not good because most people will feel this. You'll see a lot of body language that will push them back because they are, even though you're on stage, they feel like you're almost encroaching into their space. And then of course you don't want to be too far back either so that they can't see you. And that obviously is going to stun your confidence. So being able to just be aware of your stage, whether it's small or big, is just making those kind of rounds and having that in a paced way.
Very helpful. Thank you for all of that. Sounds like, when you're on stage, there's some rules that you have to follow that might be a little bit different than when we're sitting here one-on-one, or even you're in your friend group or a business meeting. Are there any strategies that you can use in those settings to be more relatable, to be more likable? When I met you, you mentioned a couple of them, ways to get people to look at you like, I want that confidence. Who is that guy? I want to be friends with that guy. What are some of those things that you use in your day-to-day life, in your friend groups, and locally here in Tampa?
So big thing is that this is like for strangers. Here's a tip for strangers on just building rapport with strangers. Use situational factor. A situational factor is a technique that you can use. It's simple. It's just use an off-direct object to create a conversation. This is different than the common thing that people will get, especially in one-on-one conversations. Let's just say I'm at a conference. I walk up to somebody. The first thing that they're going to ask me is, what do you do? So instead of that, using a situational factor allows you to use something that's already in the room to open up a conversation. Take them on the light, keep their feet light. When you go in with hard questions like, what do you do and what's this? You're already putting people in defense mechanism mode. Right. And what I've realized is now if I go, like, let's just say I'm sitting at the bar and I want to talk to this guy, but I'm just like, I don't want to just say, hey, what's up? How are you? How's your day? How's the weather? I can point to the TV and be like, oh, wow, that was a good pass, wasn't it? He's like, oh, yeah. So what are you up to? Yeah, you here? What's your name, man? I'm Jay. Yeah. Whatever it is, you're picking up a girl or you're whatever, you're finding a business connection. But these situational factors are interesting because it diffuses somebody's initial that wall that they'll put up going like, why are you talking to me? Or what's this all about? I see it all the time back in the day when I was single. That's why I didn't make the girl comment there. But when I was single, people, like my friends, would joke around with me and they would always be like, oh yeah, because they knew that I was good with communication. Let's see if you can go pick up that girl. Let's see if you can go get it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to prove something to you. And again, I would use that simple technique just to go in there and be like, oh yeah, mimosa. You got me thinking of a mimosa right now. Hey, bartender, can I grab a mimosa? Oh, so yeah. So what brings you here tonight? Who are you with? Boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden the conversation starts. Men are walking up to women all the time. Hey, how are you? They're like looking over like, you creep, like get out of here. Like I don't want to talk to you.
Right. Now it's awkward. You don't know what to talk about. You don't know what's going to happen next.
So I do that in my dailies by connecting with people.
Yeah.
I'm a master connector. So I'll be at conferences, I'll be at bars, I'll be at restaurants. I'll do whatever I can because I love people. I love engaging with people and I love testing myself to break that. I had this one gentleman and it was incredible because he was back home in Canada and in 39 years he served the Canadian military. So he's an older man and he's very, let's just say, okay, he's super fucking racist. I'm just going to mind my language. That's exactly what he was.
We've all got a grandma.
It was just, and I walk into this bar and there's the only spot left and I'll go and sit and he literally looks at me like, this guy's a piece of scum sitting next to me. He doesn't deserve to be. And I felt that energy from him, just who I am.
Oh, man.
So in my mind, I have two options. I can tell him to, F off or
have some fun with it.
I can turn around and be like, I'm going to show this guy who I actually am.
Yeah.
So I sat there. We had a couple conversations. A couple of weeks later, long story short, he came in and he actually saluted me. How I did that specifically was taking that time and energy when I knew that I was getting too close. I was taking a step back. When I knew that it was like I could feel certain energies that were coming from him and his conversation. I got him to speak about himself. I know that's a common thing for people to teach, but nobody practices it. Everyone's always in that momentum of being, because everyone loves talking about themselves. But if you really can take the time to active listen, not just hear, active listen and ask a question and get them to talk, that really is getting them to understand what it is. What's the intention behind this? What is the true intention? And then allow that space for conversation. That's what allows me to connect with anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. If you can hone in the skill of asking provocative questions, listening, and getting people to talk about what they're passionate about, I think that's the ultimate hack to getting people to like you and getting people to remember you. Yeah. Great tips there. Now, this is all stuff that you teach to men in your group, The Lion's Den. So let me ask you, there's a lot of men who might be listening, and we hear this on the news. We see the Andrew Tate stuff all the time. There's clearly a feeling in the world that young men have been disenfranchised. There's a lot of anger there. I'd love to hear what you think is going on in the world of men and what the solution that you think is and how you help them to create that solution.
I would say the common problem that I feel is a lack of leadership. In this world now where we have politicians, we got influencers, we got everybody saying all these opinions and even saying, masculinity is dying and all these common slogans that are thrown around. One thing I will go back to is the root cause of where is the leadership helping us build who we are, to build that authentic self. I realized that in the demographic of men, it is being suppressed. As I talked about earlier, we suppress our emotions so quick, we don't really even understand how to express our emotions because we were never conditioned. Our generation was more rugged and more, rub some dirt in it and kind of have that mentality of it's all on your back. This generation now is being brought into a world where it's like you can be anything you want. You can do whatever you want. You don't need to actually work on your back. You can work on a computer and make probably 10 times what your grandpa made.
Right.
So it's an interesting message that we're sending also the generations. And that's an interesting point that I'll bring up in a second here is the 3 different generations of business. But before that, it's really looking at men now. And I look at more young boys bringing that topic up. That's why I have a mentorship program that I do that's built in. And my mentee, my first mentee, 16-year-old kid, he came to me and he was the same thing. He's like, look, man, I got energy, I got drive, I'm hungry, but I have no idea where to go. Like, I don't want to go to school. My parents, I do not want to be like my parents, so I don't want to listen to them. I went to this one Grant Cardone conference and I like the momentum, but I just feel like this is not where I should start. I just don't know what to do. I simply said, listen, let's go back to the original. Like, most people are telling you what you need, but nobody's asking you what you want. That's the biggest thing. So I sat down with him. I asked him, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? I started to understand certain things. Yes, he wants the same things that we do in life, that all of us do. But what was stopping him is the growth of the leadership in terms of really being that man. You know what I mean? Being that, creating a family unit, finding a wife, having kids, being able to grow your empire, your legacy. That momentum is gone now because everyone wants to do it for themselves. Everyone wants to build it themselves first. I'd rather be successful first before I find my wife. That's what we'll say to ourselves, right? We'll say this to ourselves. But at the end of the day, you will also understand how powerful a wife can be, the queen behind you, to support where you were even at. So this world that we live in, especially now with youngsters, is that they're given so many options. And that's the problem. Don't give options. Give them 2 options. Don't give them 100 options. Then you give them more confusion than anything. So give them 2 options. And when I say options, I mean yes, business or employee. Which avenue do you want to go through, right? Not do you want to be a boy or a girl? Like I'm going to be straight with you that we've gotten so out of the norm with what we should just be straight up about. And that's caused so much confusion, lack of leadership, lack of understanding, just where do I go? How do I do it? How do I feel? And that's where bringing this lion's den together, bringing the men together was giving them a safe place to express, giving them a safe place to say, man, I got all this pressure on my head, man. I'm running a business. I got the wife at home. The kids are mad at me. How do I control it? Well, first thing is express it. Yeah. Just say it out loud and express those emotions. And that gives you now the power to start to reignite.
I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of mixed messaging going on to men right now. They don't know how to make heads and tails of it. They don't know who to talk to about it, who to trust with their actual feelings regarding a lot of this stuff. And it's a scary world out there. So I think it's important for men to be a part of a group where they can talk openly, hear that they have shared opinions as other men around them. So where do they turn? Like, what is the solution for them? Is it to find people and to vent their concerns? Do you think there's a clear path forward?
Yes, absolutely. And this isn't to single out the ladies either, right? For the ladies, they need to also understand they're going to have men in their life. And ladies usually go through a lot more trauma, of course, than we do because of dads, because of, situations that have happened in their past. So we need to really understand that this is a common problem. Mm-hmm. This is a common problem among men to not be able to express emotions. So yes, it could be as simple as just joining a mastermind and being able to vent and express your emotions, but it's really getting together as a couple and being able to really honestly work on that and say and admit that and open and be open to that. So the pathway really is going to become, yes, of course, more information on it. the safe place to actually express those emotions. But it's going to be doing the work. It's going to be saying to yourself, look, I want to change. Because you can listen to these guys online, don't get me wrong. They do have some valid points on certain things that they will say about making money, about being that guy, being this. But it really comes down to, what is it that you want? This is, again, the problem that we're living in the social generation, is that we've created such a facade. We've created people that are calling themselves entrepreneurs with rented cars and saying, I'm making all these millions of dollars just to get people into their funnels. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
But what does make sense is that, what is it that you want? And figure out now the business, the protocol, the unit. I always tell my guys when they're like, oh yeah, like, I've been single for this many years and I need to find a woman. I was like, have you actually written down on a piece of paper how she looks, how she thinks, how she feels, what her favorite food is, her color is, everything like that? No, why would I do that? Exactly. It's going to be harder to find like that. So you got to start to manifest it. And men need that pathway, yes. But that pathway has to be created on your own.
Yeah.
I can't give you a magic carpet to be like, walk down this, you'll be the most powerful man in the world. I wish I could do that.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
But with practice and some guidance, you can find your power. And I think there's nothing more dangerous than a weak man. I think that's where you see men who are abusing women, men who are shooting up schools. Yeah. It's never the men who are successful, who are powerful, ever. So I think you're doing a really good thing with the men's group and teaching them how to find their power. And I encourage any man who's listening to this who might need that right now in their life to go contact Jay and to learn more about that. But wrapping some stuff up here, Jay.
Of course.
You got a couple of offers that are related to what we talked about. One of them is helping men, not all men, men and women, develop their speaking ability, develop their offer on stage. Tell me a little bit about that. Why is the offer so important? And what else goes into being a successful speaker?
Yeah, so we help specifically business owners that want to scale using a stage offer. And the thing is in this world now, of course, marketing is incredibly valuable. We have marketing, we got websites, we got different channels. You're in the PR space, you understand that a lot better than I do. But one thing to really focus on as a business entrepreneur is getting the most amount of eyes in the least amount of time. And that's what we solely focus on, is helping entrepreneurs get that signature talk, get that pitch that they can present on a stage, and help them source out stages. Help them get onto podcasts like this to express their message, to get their products and services out there, to convert into massive amount of profit.
Yes.
It is the quickest way to generate traffic or generate leads without having to spend tens and twenties of thousands of dollars on ads and being able to build out all this momentum before actually just taking it to market.
It's true. Being on stage, having done it a few times in my life, it's the ultimate opportunity because you already start with established trust, which is oftentimes the hardest thing. Then if you deliver value throughout that talk, your chance of opting someone in at the end during your call to action is, I've closed 100% of the room on an opt-in page. QR code, give me your name, email, and phone number, 100% of the room. You can't do that with any other marketing channel. So highly encourage anyone who wants to get deeper into speaking to go contact Jay and learn more about that.
And with that being said, it's like, that's why I really want to take the personal approach.
Yeah.
I still bring in the one-on-one coaching. That's one thing. I know it's very hard even with my time availability, but I have to, because the thing is that nowadays where somebody's just selling an online course or selling the next new program, it has to be fully immersed. I want to get to know my clients. I want to be able to customize and personalize to their specific business, not just give them a framework. Anybody can give you a framework online, right? But who can actually use now, hypnotherapy skills and NLP skills to get inside your mind, pull out that powerful opening story, carve out what content deliverables need to be there. What call to action would be the most effective for your specific products and services? And how do you tie it together and really showcase on stage the right way?
That's so powerful. Where can people go? Is there a link where people can go to learn more, to opt in?
The best thing would be just to follow me on Instagram at Jay
Beautiful.
Dhahan.
I'll link you in the show notes here, brother. And thank you for joining me on the podcast. I learned a lot, man. I love when I'm able to interview people who I met in real life, who I respect and was curious about, and I'm able to bring them in, have a conversation, learn from them, build that relationship. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me, man. It takes people like you to build organizations like this, to get the awareness out, to bring other speakers on here. So I appreciate you for having me today.
All right. Go follow Jay. His Instagram's going to be linked in the show notes. Thank you, brother.